Hello everyone, my name is Lisa Graham from YYC Beeswax, and today I'm going to share with you how to put together a mini rolled pillar candle. So in my other camera feed over here, which I'll be switching to shortly, I have all the materials set up, and that's where we're going to run you through start to finish how you create your very own mini pillar beeswax candle. So if you have your materials, feel free to get them out and follow along and enjoy this video. Alright, so moving over to the other camera, I have all the materials we'll need set out here. So on the very bottom we have our beeswax sheet, then we have our ruler over here. So this is a 24-inch metal ruler, and I really love using these because they are long enough that when we're cutting corner to corner on the sheets, they're still big enough. And we have the heat gun here that we'll be using shortly. You can also use a hairdryer instead if that's all you have. And we're going to use this to take off the bloom on the beeswax sheet. We'll talk about that in a minute. Over here we have the wick and the scissors. So we'll use the scissors to cut the wick. And finally I have an X-Acto knife here. You are welcome to use the edge of a ruler. This ruler, the edge is actually quite sharp, so it works great for cutting. You can use a pizza cutter, anything you want to use that is going to cut through the sheets. And the sheets, once they are heated up, they cut quite easily. So a safety point with this knife, I have one more item over here, pretty common household item. I have a tin can, and I'm going to be using that to protect my fingers. So be very, very careful if you're using any sort of sharp object. I had a little accident a couple of years ago and it was not very fun. So we take our knife safety very seriously. Alright, so that's all the materials you need. We've got the cutting board, ruler, beeswax sheet, scissors, wick, a heating implement. So we have the heat gun here, a cutting implement, I have the X-Acto knife, and then our safety can up there. And I'll show you how that's all used shortly. So let's get started. First step when you are making your beeswax candles is to get your wax set up. I'm taking all of the pieces off and we're left with our wax. So this wax that I'm using today, this one is called Celtic Green. It's a lovely color to use in the holiday season. It's a very vibrant green, and right now if you look very closely at it, it looks like it's kind of a lighter green, and down in this corner it's a little bit darker. So this sheet has what's called bloom on it, and bloom is natural. It happens to beeswax over time. It's actually one of the indicators you are getting a pure beeswax product or a high quality beeswax product. So what we're going to do is first of all take this bloom off by heating it up. So I'm going to take the heat gun and very gently we're going to heat it up, and I'll stop and show you the difference in the color. So already you can see up in this corner it is so much darker, it's a lot richer color. And by taking the bloom off, we're making this easier to work with. The bloom takes away some of the stickiness in the beeswax, and we're also heating it up a little bit, so it's going to be a little bit easier to manipulate. So I'm going to finish up this side. You want to be very careful not to melt your wax through, and there's a little bit of bloom left on this side, and what I like to do is flip it over to make sure we get all of the bloom off, and that little bit of bloom on the other side will come off when I heat this side up. So be very careful not to melt your wax when you're heating it up to get it ready to work with. All right, there we go. So our wax is ready to work with. So the next step in the process for making these pillar candles, basically what we're going to do is cut the wax across, and then we're going to roll it in the two pieces. So the first step, I'm going to take the ruler, I'm going to measure halfway, and I'm going to put a marking in. I like to use an X-Acto knife. You can use your fingernail. Pretty much anything is going to work. So we're going to find the halfway point here and mark it just a little bit of a notch, and then we'll head over to the other side and do the same thing again. Okay, so we've got our two notches, and what can be helpful for you to see the notches is to gently pull the wax up where we made those markings. And I'm going to use those as a guide and put the ruler across. And then I'm going to take my can and I'm going to keep my fingers out of the way of the knife, and we're going to cut along the ruler here. So I'm putting pressure down on the can to make sure the ruler stays in place, and we cut all the way across. Hopefully it has gone all the way through. Perfect. Alright, and since these two pieces are going to make one candle, what I'm going to do is line them up beside each other and make sure they are actually equal size. So if you look closely, it looks like they are equal size, so these ones are going to be good. If one is a little bit bigger, so I'm going to exaggerate it here, so you can see they're two different sizes, what I would do is line them up and then mark along the edge of the shorter piece, cut off that extra. So what I'm going to do next is cut a little bit of wick. So we'll bring that wick up, and I'm going to measure the wick. We have scissors too. So I'm going to measure the wick, the width, plus a little bit more. So I'm going to do a very simple candle today. I'm just going to cut it off and have the wick stick straight out. If you want to get a little bit fancier, you can check out our beehive tutorial where I show you how to make a fancy looped wick. So you can do the loop. If you're going to do the loop, cut a little bit of extra wick. I'm just going to do it plain and simple today, so we're going to cut the wick here. And then we're going to get started with the rolling process. So to get started rolling, I'm going to carefully fold this edge. So we're starting the rolling process. This is the trickiest part about creating your candle, is getting it started. So basically what I'm doing is I'm moving all the way along the edge, and I'm gently getting that edge of the wax over the wick. So we're starting this rolling process, and this can take a little bit. This is one of the reasons it's very, very helpful to heat up your wax before you start. It makes this part super easy. Okay, so now we've got it started, and we're just going to gently start rolling that wax, and pretty soon it's going to just start moving nice and easy. So what you want to keep in mind as you're doing this, you want to keep your candle as tight as you possibly can, and you want to make sure the bottom stays nice and flat. And the sheets are pretty forgiving. If you do make a mistake, if they're not tight enough, if the bottom is not flat, you can always unroll them and re-roll them. So you can see we're starting to get some size, and it's starting to roll a little bit easier. So then we'll just get going on the rolling, and we roll all the way to the end, and you can see it's deviating a little bit, so I'll unroll a little bit, straighten it out, and we'll keep rolling all the way to the end, making sure the bottom is flat, keeping it nice and tight. So there we go. We're about halfway done. So the next step, I'm going to make sure these edges are the same. So there's a little bit of a deviation in height, so I'm going to flip it over. And this one looks a little bit closer, so I'm slightly overlapping the pieces of wax, and the strategy I like to use with these is to roll, making sure the bottom is even with the new piece, and I'm going to roll, and I left the piece behind. Sometimes it will stay and stick, and when this is about at the top, when the end of our last piece is at the top, I'm going to pull up that bottom piece, and I'm going to gently press it into the candle, and then we'll take the piece we just finished, gently press that into the candle as well. These seams also are much easier to do when you're working with warm wax. And then we're going to roll this piece. It's a continuation of rolling just like we did the last piece. I have a little bit of a deviation, so sometimes if it's just a little bit of a deviation, this one's a little bit too much. But if you set your candle down and press on the top, it will just bump down into place. So this one is actually quite off center, so we'll just pull it all the way back, and we're going to start pretty much again. So rolling all the way through. This one is looking much better now. Alright, so we got all the way to the end, and the final step, I'm going to press it down just to make sure it's flat on the bottom. Final step is to press the final edge in, and this is going to make sure your candle does not come apart, so you want to make sure the seam is really nice. If you need to heat up your wax again a little bit to make pressing it in a little bit easier, you are welcome to do that. So there we have it. We have a nice, beautiful mini pillar candle. And the bloom will recur on this candle, so what you'll do if you don't burn it before the bloom comes back, if you want to get this vibrant green color again, I would take some heat, and you want to gently heat it up, being very careful not to melt it, and it will come back to this nice vibrant color. Some people like the look of the bloom. It's a little bit more matte, it lightens the color, so it is totally up to you what you prefer. Alright, I hope you had fun following along making a rolled pillar candle. They are super easy. You are welcome to join our Facebook group, Beginner Beeswax Candle Making, for assistance in your own candle making journey. You can also get more beeswax sheet ideas on our Pinterest board, so you can find us at YYC Beeswax on Pinterest, and we have a whole board full of ideas on what you can do with the sheets of candles. We also have other do-it-yourself ideas on there, and if you want to make other rolled candles, we do have other tutorials, so you're welcome to check those out. We have a beehive and some taper candles, some mini tapers and some full tapers. And you can check us out on any of the social media channels. On Facebook, we're at YYC Beeswax, Instagram at YYC Wax, Twitter at YYC Wax. You can check out our YouTube channel with lots of educational videos. We're at YYC Beeswax there. And I want to thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure to share my knowledge with you, and I hope you learned something. So thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again. Have a wonderful day.